The following is a presentation of the Reviewing Network Sports. We're back! Hello everybody and welcome back to the NFL Network. It's our second season here on the Reviewing Network Sports, and needless to say, it's going to be a much bigger, much more different experience than what we had last year. Of course, last year was kind of me just trying this out and seeing if it was going to pan out pretty well, so this is us taking it to the next level in general here. And on this week on this last week of the preseason, before we get to the regular season festivities starting next week, I figure why not go ahead and do a special early show taking a look at my predictions for the 8 specific divisions leading up to this coming season. And if you know my records from beforehand, let's just say that you should not take my opinions and predictions on here legitimately. But let me tell you something, it will probably be much better than what some predictors out there will say. For example, I've been seeing a lot of predictors saying that the Denver Broncos will somehow beat the Kansas City Chiefs this year in the AFC West. I think it'll be a tough division overall. This will probably be the toughest division in terms of all the teams in here this season, but we'll save my specific evaluations of all 4 divisions for just a little bit here. But I want to give you a rundown of what we're doing here today. Today, like I said, we're going to run down my early season predictions. These are my predictions that I kind of put together through Playoff Predictors, that's my main source of making predictions on here, as I've been doing it since last year, and checking to see what my overall opinions on each division is going to be this year, depending on what the decisions that have been made this year, and so on and so forth. So that's what this week's going to be about. I'll give you my predictions of where everybody will end up when the season is over, give you my playoff predictions, and who I think is going to go to the Super Bowl, which, let's be honest, will probably not be right because, let's be honest, somehow, some way, Kansas City will find its way back to the Super Bowl, and then maybe it'll be Philadelphia, San Francisco, one of those 2 teams that have been in there the last couple of years, maybe Tampa Bay. I mean, let's be honest, the Super Bowl right now has been nothing but rematches over the last couple of years, so I wouldn't expect that to change anytime soon. But let's just pretend like I'm making these predictions here, and this is probably what's going to happen. So let's get to it here. Let's start off here with the first division that we have here, and that is, of course, the AFC East. So, of course, the AFC East for the last couple of years has been dominated by the Buffalo Bills. Before then, of course, it was dominated heavily by the New England Patriots, who this year kicked Gerard Mayo to the curb and have now hired Mike Vrabel as the new head coach of the team. And the Miami Dolphins are hoping to make a comeback after the last couple of years' disasters, which basically has been revolving around trying to keep Tua healthy and trying to be good while Tua isn't there, it's easier said than done, But the big one, of course, is the New York Jets. Will they be able to turn the tide around after Aaron Rodgers pretty much destroyed the team last year? Let's just kind of run down each of the teams here. So let's start off with the team that has been leading the division the last couple of years, and that is the Buffalo Bills. Now, the Buffalo Bills this year did lose some key players. Von Miller has now gone off to the Washington Commanders. They had Amari Cooper in there. He went into free agency, and he's now with the Raiders. Will Clapp is playing for the New Orleans Saints. Kingsley Jonathan is with the Texans. Casey Two-Hills with the Texans. Quentin Morris and Devon Swooner with the Jaguars. Mac Hollins is now with the New England Patriots, or they were with the New England Patriots. I'm doing this as the cutoff for all the teams has been put together, so I'm not entirely sure where everybody has gone so far because I haven't looked at all the lists yet, but we'll do it as we go along here. But the Buffalo Bills have been the most dominant team of the last couple of years besides the Kansas City Chiefs. They've been the ones who have had, they have averaged at least 10 to 13 wins since that first playoff run in 2019 when Josh Allen came into the league the year before, and then eventually the tide began to turn. They have not been out of the postseason since that 2019 season, and they've been first in the division every single year. They've always been this close to getting to the Super Bowl, but there has always been one obstacle in the way. And that, of course, is the Kansas City Chiefs. And that's the game where, and that's, of course, where you have, that's going to be the biggest thing for anybody in the AFC East, in the AFC in general. Can you stop Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs? The only team that I know that has been able to come close to doing that, well, obviously the Cincinnati Bengals did that in the 2021 season, but ever since then, it's been Kansas City all the way, and it's been like that ever since. Like they have usually been the representative of the AFC and in the Super Bowl. But the big question now becomes, what do you do now what do you do for the Buffalo Bills? I mean, you do everything you can to try to get past that point where you could finally push past that and get to the AFC and get to the Super Bowl. And really, the time is slipping away for the Buffalo Bills at this point. I mean, granted, yes, they're still a very good team, and I think they still will be with Josh Allen coming off an MVP season last year. I think this team is primed and ready to go for a Super Bowl run, but it really has to be the big thing. Like, yeah, you can beat the Kansas City Chiefs all you want to in the regular season. That won't matter because the last couple of years have shown you've done a pretty good job of beating them in the regular season, but when it comes to the playoffs, it just seems like you can't get the job done. So really, it's going to depend on, is this finally going to be the time for the Buffalo Bills to do just that? And, I think they can still do it. I think the pieces are still there, but that window is slowly but surely starting to close in on them. So they better be careful because, let's be honest, the other teams in the division are waiting to potentially pounce on them, specifically the New England Patriots, who made the big move of grabbing Mike Vrabel, the former player of the team, was the head coach of the Titans, actually beat the Patriots in the AFC wildcard game in 2019 that essentially ended Tom Brady's Patriots run. And so now here he is in New England, and needless to say, they look like the best team overall in the preseason. I mean, they were scoring a ton of points. They scored 48 alone against the Washington Commanders in the first game of the preseason. Granted, it's a preseason, so it really doesn't seem like much, but it seems like they've got the right track going for them here. And, Drake May had a pretty good year last year, despite all the problems of the Patriots last year. They've rebranded this whole team around. They got a hot-looking rookie running back in Travion Henderson. They grabbed Stephon Diggs from the Houston Texans, and Mac Hollins. As I said before, Mac Hollins is on this team. He was with the Buffalo Bills in the preseason, but now he's with New England. And of course, you got a team that is very much trying to get back to the glory days. And I think they have a chance to potentially start the pathway to getting back to that point. But it's going to be a tough road ahead, considering that Buffalo is still very much game, and also the Miami Dolphins. And for the Miami Dolphins, the biggest thing simply comes down to, can you keep Tua Tagovailoa from getting injured, and can you still be good if he does get injured and he can't return to the game? That's going to be easier said than done. And Mike McDaniel, I think his job security has to be on the line at some point here. But they're grabbing some weapons for him to work with. They've got a backup quarterback in Zach Wilson, who of course was with the Jets and with the Broncos last year, and then Quinn Ewers, which they drafted from Texas last year. They have the quarterbacks in play here. Wide receivers, you still got Tyreek Hill, you still got Jalen Waddle. Running backs, Devin Achane, Ollie Gordon the rookie running back Ollie Gordon II. Tight ends, they got rid of Jonnu Smith and replaced him with Darren Waller, who hasn't been playing for a couple years now, but of course spent those years with the Ravens, the Raiders, and the Giants. In terms of defense, one of the biggest acquisitions they got was getting Minka Fitzpatrick back from Pittsburgh, and a couple of other notable additions to the team as well. Everything is everything right now is there for the Dolphins. The question is going to be, can you simply keep Tua Tagovailoa alive, and can you still hang in there? Because there's a lot of problems with the Dolphins in general, not just with the quarterback, but also the consistency with the team overall. Like a couple weeks they'll look pretty good, but then Tua gets injured, and all of a sudden you can't really do anything because you don't have a quarterback that's capable of hanging in there. And more importantly, one of the big things that's been the problem for the last couple of years, playing in cold weather. And there's going to be times when they have to go somewhere and play in cold weather, and they have not been successful at all in cold weather. And if you're going to go into the playoffs and go up against a team like Kansas City or Buffalo or even Baltimore, you've got to be able to play through the elements. And that's something I think they got to take into consideration this season. It's going to be a tough call overall for what Miami's going to be dealing with here, but again, we'll wait to see what happens. But the big question on everyone's mind is, what will the New York Jets look like in 2025? Now that Aaron Glenn is now the head coach, now that they have a new general manager, now that Aaron Rodgers is gone, and they basically have rebranded this team, and now it's Justin Fields at the quarterback position for them, and you also have Tyrod Taylor as the backup. You also have the returns of Breece Hall, I was going to say Alan Lazard. Garrett Wilson has signed a lofty contract to keep him around. That was not the only big contract decision they made this season. Sauce Gardner got his big contract. He signed for the next 4 years. So they have the positions in place to get this team going here. But the question will be, how good will Justin Fields be as he controls this team for the rest of the season? I mean, when he was here in Pittsburgh last year, he was pretty good. But, of course, he got replaced by Russell Wilson, and he never really got a chance to come back into the season. So it's a big gamble for them to go with Justin Fields. Are they playing to try to get this team back on track and back to the playoffs? Or are they trying to push for an early draft pick next year in the high teens? And we'll see what happens there. It doesn't look good for them overall. My overall predictions for them, I've got for the AFC East in general, I've got the Buffalo Bills leading this one, 15 wins, 2 losses. They'll lead the division overall. I just think the Buffalo Bills, I think they're playing the best football right now, but I feel like they're in desperation mode because that window is slowly closing for them, and they feel like they got to push themselves to that limit, because if they don't, they could probably stand a chance to lose out on yet another chance to get to the big game. New England and Miami, I've got them tied at 8 and 9. I really don't know how each one's going to feel during the course of the season. I think New England will move back on track here. Not quite ready to get back to the postseason just yet, but with Mike Vrabel as the head coach, I think it'll help them out in the long run. And as for the Jets, I got them at the same record than last year, 5 and 12. I'm just not fully convinced that Justin Fields can lead this team to a successful run in its first season. I mean, I feel like they're one of those teams that are going to be trying to eye the big draft picks, the big quarterbacks in 2026's NFL draft. But that's my picks for the AFC East: 15-2 for Buffalo, 8-9 for New England, 8-9 for Miami, and 5-12 for the New York Jets. Moving on now to the AFC North, which has been dominated the last couple of years by the Baltimore Ravens, which, let's be honest, last year it was basically gift-wrapped to them by the Pittsburgh Steelers because of yet another December collapse. And this year's going to be very different for the Baltimore Ravens, specifically in the fact that Justin Tucker, their longtime kicker, their all-pro kicker, was released by the team because of inappropriate sexual conduct allegations. And so now that's a big piece of their offense. So that's a big piece of that offense. And not the offense, just the team in general, just gone, because Justin Teal was usually money for them. And the big question kind of stays the same here with them as well as for the Buffalo Bills. It's just like, they've been very good the last couple of years. Last year alone, they had the benefit of getting Derrick Henry going, and Derrick Henry just dominated the game last year to the point where I really think a lot of teams will be ready for him this time around, and they're not going to let this guy get past him overall. It's just like, no, we're coming after your ass big time here. And the big thing, of course, is, and again, kind of going back to the Buffalo Bills, the big thing is, can you get past Patrick Mahomes? Again, this is a team that has beaten Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs during the regular season, but in the postseason, that doesn't mean jack shit overall. And I know Lamar Jackson's got that record for all the times he hasn't lost in the NFC, and I think this year will be the year where that record is being put to the test, because he's going up against some pretty good teams in the Lions, the Los Angeles Rams. We'll see how the Chicago Bears do overall. They look like they're on the way to getting back on track. Minnesota, Green Bay. There's a lot of question marks about whether or not that record that he's had against Lamar Jackson's had against the NFC is going to hold for them this time around. And I don't know if that's going to be the case this time around, but Baltimore should be very high up there in the possibility of getting back in there, you would think, but then there's a couple of other teams that are trying to get up there again, and that one of them is, of course, the Cincinnati Bengals, who, boy, what an off season they had, and not in a good way. I mean, they had a hard time getting their first-round draft pick to sign with them because of contract language, and yet, he had every reason to hold out and potentially go back to college, but he did eventually sign with them, and I don't know. I felt like I felt like he should have just taken the Bengals for what they had for them and just basically screwed around with them. But of course, they're not going to do that. Neither is Trey Hendrickson, who did end up signing a 1-year extension this year to stick with the team. He'll still be a free agent next season, but those were like the two big ones that they needed to get back in there. The defense overall got an improvement over the draft overall. The offense still looks pretty good, but the big question is going to be: can the defense get back on track here? Can the defense find a way to keep that momentum going that they had at the end of the season, and can they find a way back to the playoffs again? They look pretty solid in the preseason game against the Washington Commanders. Mitchell Tinsley, I think, is going to be somebody that I think is going to become a big star. It could be potentially be a rising star with the Bengals if they keep. Be a kind of an alternative to somebody like a T. Higgins or a Andrea Iosivas, but we'll see what happens there. There's a lot of question marks about it. Can this team find a way to get back on track with the defense overall? I think they did a good job of improving the defense in the draft, but the question is that going to play out overall in the actual games themselves? Because if you watch the preseason, the defense kind of struggled big time, especially early on in those games. But again, something we'll take to see what happens there. Cincinnati, hopefully, will try to get back on track this season. The Cleveland Browns, on the other hand, I really don't know what the hell's going on with them because of everything that's been going on. You know, the whole thing with drafting 2 quarterbacks on draft night, Dylan Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders. Joe Flacco, they picked up in free agency. They traded for Kenny Pickett, who then they traded for, again, just yesterday, to the Las Vegas Raiders. They got rid of Tyler Huntley, so now it's essentially down to 3 quarterbacks in there. Joe Flacco, who is going to be the starter this coming week, Dylan Gabriel, and Shedeur Sanders. And they have a running back core that includes Dylan Sampson and Quinshon Judkins. Unfortunately, Quinshon Judkins got himself into some trouble beforehand. He got arrested for a domestic assault and battery charge. And no question on whether or not will he be ready to go before it's ready. Remember, this team does not have Nick Chubb this season. He's gone on to play for the Texans. And, just a lot of question marks for the Cleveland Browns in general. And I think that, let's be honest, they should be better. They should be at least better than they were when they had Deshaun Watson and Jameis Winston there last season because they brought Joe Flacco back. They finally realized that, hey, maybe this Joe Flacco guy could actually help us more than we needed to. So let's get him back in here. And I think that will help them on the long run. I think they will be able to get back on track with him there. But everything else, though, it's too soon to tell. It could be another Cleveland season. I don't think there's going to be anything that will say that, this team is willing to finally get back on track here and actually do something different compared to what they've done the last couple of years, which have just not been working for them. I don't know. I just don't think that anything's really going to come out from Cleveland this season overall. But that brings us to the final team, my home team, the Pittsburgh Steelers, which, talk about an off season of what the hell are you guys thinking? Because, of course, as the season began, they started with the blockbuster trade of DK Metcalf, and then they went ahead and got Aaron Rodgers. They let Russell Wilson and Justin Fields walk away. They let Najee Harris walk away. They traded away George Pickens. They were about to trade. There was a sense that they were going to trade away T.J. Watt, but luckily they got a deal done before that got too complicated for them. And now we're in a situation where I really don't know what the hell to think about this team because honestly, this off season has been really, really rough to think about. I mean, there's just so much stuff going on in terms of who they signed, who they got rid of. I mean, just today, they got rid of several cornerbacks. Like, they got rid of the guy who got the most interceptions last year, Beanie Bishop. They let him go. They let Chuck Clark go. They let Robert Woods go. These are guys they signed to help throughout the offense here. And now you have an offense that is really like you got Aaron Rodgers, Kenneth Gainwell, Ben Skoranek, Scotty Miller, DK Metcalf, Jonnu Smith. I mean, this team would have been awesome 6 years ago, but not in 2025. Not when you're in a division that has Joe Burrow and Lamar Jackson. I really don't think this team has a lot there. Jalen Ramsey, Darius Slay, Juan Thornhill. I mean, these guys were great back in the day, but now they're over 10 years in the league, and most of them are getting past their prime here. I mean, I don't know. I've just gotten to the point now where I've been so disappointed by the Steelers every year that I'm just accepting the fact that this is probably going to be another 9-8 season, or even worse than that. I would love it to be worse than that, so they can maybe move up to the 1 seed and get the 1 spot and draft a quarterback next year. But knowing this team, it's probably not going to happen. So yeah, so probably another 9-8 season, which coincidentally, if my predictions are any indications, that might just be enough to have them win the division just barely. As you see here, I have the Steelers at 9-8, and the Bengals at 9-8, but the Steelers would win over division rankings. Baltimore, I have them at 7-10. I just have that feeling that Lamar Jackson's NFC record is going to get broken this year by a couple of really good teams, and I think that's going to hold them off in the long run. And then the Cleveland Browns, I have them at 2-15. Sitting there at 1-5 in terms of the division. So I think it's Pittsburgh at 9-8, Cincinnati at 9-8. Pittsburgh wins the tiebreaker. Baltimore at 7-10. Cleveland 2-15. Again, probably not my best predictions overall, but that's just the feeling going into the season. Moving on now to the AFC South, which has been dominated by the Houston Texans in the last couple of years. C.J. Stroud has won a couple of playoff games, but they've never been able to get past, the Baltimore Ravens or the Kansas City Chiefs to get to that next level. Actually, it's been kind of like that for decades now. I mean, this was a bit like this back in the day when they first made the playoffs. And the big question's really going to be, are they going to be able to come back on track again this year? I mean, they've had 10-7 records the last 2 seasons. They're trying to make the playoffs again, and they got rid of a lot of key players. Stephon Diggs got traded away to the New England Patriots. You have a new offensive room now led by Nico Collins, and you have newcomers Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel. Nick Chubb is now leading the running back core. Defense overall looks pretty strong in general, but again, can you get past it? It's again going to be the same thing I have to say about Buffalo and Baltimore, and it's that can you get past the monster that is the Kansas City Chiefs? And I think that's going to be really hard to do in a division like this, especially considering some of the moves made this season that I think are really going to be indications of what in this division for the other teams in general. But Indianapolis will certainly not be one of those teams in action. I mean, when you really look at what Indianapolis has done at this point, I mean, they drafted Anthony Richardson 2 years ago, and just like that, they're already done with him. They've essentially told Anthony Richardson, yeah, we're going to go ahead and start Daniel Jones, who hasn't played much of last season, but we trust him more than we trust you. Ouch. I mean, that's a killer right there. And, when you put that much pressure on a guy, and it's Anthony Richardson isn't completely scot-free in this too. Like, the guy's had trouble staying on the field, and not just because he gets injured, but because he just seems lazy and doesn't really want to do anything. It's just like, I don't really feel like it. He's like SpongeBob in that episode where Plankton wins him in a card game, and he wants him to make a Krabby Patty. He's just like, nah, I don't really feel like it. Like, that's what it feels like with Anthony Richardson. The guy just doesn't feel like he wants to be there, honestly. And you know what? Because of that, maybe I think he is. Maybe I think this was just deserved. I mean, I feel like he got what he deserved at this point. But regardless, I don't think this team's going to be any good this year. I mean, they have a bright spot in Tyler Warren, who looked pretty good overall in the preseason. But other than that, though, nothing else about this Colts team really screams out a contender in this division overall, especially considering that the Houston Texans are still playing good and that the Jacksonville Jaguars actually got rid of somebody, and they actually got a coach that could be moving them into the next level. So, of course, the Jacksonville Jaguars got rid of Doug Peterson. They hired Liam Cohen, and, they also hired a new general manager in James Gladstone because, the last general manager was screwing up so many head coaching on interviews that they basically fired him, and lo and behold, Liam Cohen left his job in Tampa Bay to go work for Jacksonville. And the big question is going to be, can this team get back to where they were a couple years ago, where they were a surprise playoff team and actually won a playoff game against the Los Angeles Chargers, but again couldn't get past the Kansas City Chiefs. Of course, the big new addition to the team is Travis Hunter from Colorado. We haven't really got to see a whole lot from him so far in the preseason, but I mean, this is a guy that a lot of people are going to be watching for. You got him as a wide receiver. You got Brian Thomas Jr. coming off of that great first year that he had. This team overall has the potential to get back on track here, and I think they can find a way. If Liam Cohen is as good as he says he is, they can find a way to sneak their way back into the number one position in that division, winning the division overall. And then you have the Tennessee Titans, which is very weird because they have the number 1 pick. They draft Cam Ward. And I gotta say, Cam Ward probably is feeling so good right now because he doesn't have to deal with the over-mounting pressure, because a lot of the pressure is on rookie quarterbacks like Shedeur Sanders over in Cleveland. Like, Cam Ward's been able to do what he needs to do to get this team back on track and to get this team back on track and back into the playoffs. And so far in the preseason, he's looked really good. I mean, he doesn't look like he's afraid just yet. And, it's going to be a big thing to see what he can do overall. And the Tennessee Titans looked very good overall in the preseason. They looked very strong. They got a couple of good weapons in Erica Ayamanor. I think I pronounced that, Ayamanor. A veteran core that includes Van Jefferson, Tyler Lockett, Calvin Ridley, and a red-hot tight end in Gunnar Helm, who's looked really good. I mean, there's a lot of potential for this team to really make some noise here overall, but like I said, kind of like with New England, I'm not really in New York. I'm not really expecting them to do a whole lot overall, but it will feel much better with Cam Ward under center. I think he will have a bright future ahead of them, and I think this year, he'll prove a lot of people that how good he can really be this season, and then next year they'll probably be in contention for the division overall when they re-roster the team and get some good weapons around them. So in terms of the AFC South, I've actually got the Jacksonville Jaguars winning the division at 13-4. I've got the Texans at 11-6. Titans, I actually have them up at 6-11. And I think the Colts will be right up there with the Cleveland Browns at 4-13 for one of those quarterbacks in the 2026 NFL Draft. I just don't think the Colts really are going to be that good this year. Which now brings us to the last team in the last division in the AFC, and that is the AFC West. And remember a couple years ago when everyone thought that the AFC West was going to be so difficult for Patrick Mahomes and the company to keep that streak going that they had of winning the division? I mean, they just got rid of Tyreek Hill. Look at what everyone else has got around him. Denver's got Russell Wilson. The Raiders just rehired Josh McDaniels as their head coach. The Chargers have Justin Herbert. It's just like, yeah, and take a guess on what happened. Kansas City won the Super Bowl that year, and nobody was even close to them whatsoever. This feels like what 2022 should have been, because this year actually feels like this is the toughest division out of all the divisions that are in here this year. I mean, the AFC West overall really has a stacked division, and it helps because of what the Denver Broncos were able to accomplish last year with Bo Nix as the quarterback. Now the fact that they made the playoffs, they didn't really do a whole lot against Buffalo, but it's a step in the right direction, and they prove that there's potential to possibly usurp Patrick Mahomes overall. I think it's going to be a tough act to do, but it's not entirely impossible. I mean, they showed a lot of promise in the preseason overall. There's a lot of players they had on there look pretty good. They've added additions like R.J. Harvey, the rookie running back, J.K. Dobbins, who was with the Chargers. They've got Cortland Sutton still there. Bo Nix is still playing at a top level. I think there's a lot of potential there for the Denver Broncos to really keep up the pace with the Kansas City Chiefs overall. It's going to be a very tough race this year. And, this is the first time I can honestly say that Kansas City better watch out. But needless to say, I think Kansas City overall is still very much possibly the top contender to take the division overall and possibly get back to the Super Bowl, because, that's what it really does feel like with this team overall. Like, you think they're down, and yet they always find a way to come back and just come in there and just basically spoil the party for everybody, because we know they're going to be there in Pasadena this February. So, but there's a lot of potential on this team overall to keep the train going. And it's going to be a two-horse race in this division between the Denver Broncos and the Kansas City Chiefs. Although the Las Vegas Raiders might try to gain some traction in there, but then again, they are going back to an old relic, a head coach. Pete Carroll as the head coach seems like one of the more odder choices to grab as the head coach of a team. But the team overall, the big question is going to be, the big question overall is, can this team really compete overall when you have Geno Smith as the starting quarterback? I mean, you got Ashton Jeanty, which is your top pick this year in the draft, and you got a second year with Brock Bowers, who had a great first season overall. But again, I really don't think there is enough there for the Las Vegas Raiders to really power their way into contention with the top two teams in the division overall. I think they'll be good. I don't think they're going to be great overall. I think that Pete Carroll will bring some of his expertise to the table. Again, it's going to be a tough race here, especially with the Los Angeles Chargers after the year they had with Jim Harbaugh. Now, this year is notable because Joey Bosa is off the team. He's now with Buffalo, and now Denzel Perryman is the only team that is still on the team, who has been there ever since they were still in San Diego. They made the playoffs last year in 11-6, almost won against Houston, but then Houston came back in the second half and completely botched that plan. Justin Herbert is still playing at an elite level. They got a lot of weapons for him to work with this time around. Najee Harris is the big acquisition from Pittsburgh. They also drafted a running back in Omari and Hampton. They got a new couple wide receiver weapons like Trey Harris, Keandre Lambert-Smith, a tight end in Rwanda Gadsden. There's a lot of things to get excited for with the Los Angeles Chargers, and I think there is still potential there to potentially stay in the contention for a playoff spot. But again, it's going to be very tricky this year. In fact, overall, the AFC West as a whole is very hard for me to predict this time around. So in terms of my predictions, I still have Kansas City winning the division at 12-5, but I think Denver is very much in contention to be right up there with them overall. But I am going to give Kansas City the leading win at 13-4. I have the Denver Broncos at 12-5. I have the Chargers at 8-9, and I have the Raiders down at 4-13. Like I said, the Raiders are the question mark right here. I don't think Pete Carroll and Geno Smith are going to be the ones that will help push this team to the next level overall. But again, it'll put them in contention with the Colts and the Browns and the Jets, potentially for one of those top quarterbacks coming up in the 2026 draft. So, as far as the teams that would make the playoffs in the AFC, the Buffalo Bills at 15-2 would be number one. The Jacksonville Jaguars at 13-4, they'd be two. Kansas City at 13-4 would be 3. Pittsburgh would be 9-8. The Denver Broncos would be a wild card team. So would the Houston Texans, and so would the Cincinnati Bengals. So that is the AFC. Now let's take a look at the NFC. And of course, we begin in the NFC East, and starting off with the Dallas Cowboys, who again, much like Cincinnati, had one of those off seasons they would like to forget because of was one of the biggest reasons being that they fired their head coach. They waited late until well after every other team had already started looking for head coaches and started selecting head coaches. And they basically picked somebody who I don't really think was really their first choice. They felt like they just had to grab him when they had him. Brian Schottenheimer is their head coach. And, they make a lot of signings. Miles Sanders, Javonte Williams, Paris Campbell, Robert Jones, Dante Fowler. They traded for George Pickens. They grabbed Kaiir Elam. Joe Milton they picked up from the New England Patriots. The biggest question, though, on everyone's mind is, will Micah Parsons suit up on week number 1? Micah Parsons looks like he's trying to hold out, and we have not heard so much since last week when, he got rid of all Cowboys mentions on social media. He was seen on Friday's preseason finale, looking up at the stadium, sitting on a medical seat, like, I just want to get out of here, man. Like, he did not look like he wanted to be there. But again, we'll wait to see what happens. Common sense would tell you probably not going to be here next year. He's probably not going to hold out, but I'm sure they're going to find a way before the season is up to do that, because that's the same thing that happened last year with Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb. They waited until the last minute and basically gave him everything they wanted. So I think that's what Micah Parsons' plan is right now. Just wait it out, see what happens, and if it doesn't work, if it doesn't work out, he just holds out. And Jerry Jones isn't helping out either by going on TV trying to make himself look like the hero and all this. No, you don't look like the hero, dude. You look like an old, obnoxious douchebag by not signing the guy that you need to have your team be successful. But the Dallas Cowboys, of course, isn't the big name. It isn't the big toy boat isn't the big name in the NFC East. It's of course not the New York Giants, but I'll be honest, the New York Giants did look pretty good in the preseason. Jackson Dart looks like he could be a stud in the making. They have Russell Wilson starting off the season, and then Jameis Winston is still there as one of the quarterbacks. Cam Scatterboo is one of their top rookie players they have. Gunnar Olszewski, Malik Neighbors coming back after a strong season. Wan'Dale Robinson, Darius Slayton, Theo Johnson, Thomas Fadone. It's going to be very interesting to see how the Giants play it out this season. I don't think they're going to be that great overall. Plus a lot of stiff competition in this division alone, with especially the two big teams in here, including the world champs, the Philadelphia Eagles, coming off of a very strong Super Bowl run last year that was for the ages. And now this year they've signed a lot of different people to their team. They grabbed Adoree Jackson from the New York Giants. They grabbed Harrison Bryant from the Raiders, who they then traded to the Texans, and then the Texans just released him. But of course, they have Saquon Barkley. They signed him to a new extension, and the team overall is looking like it's heading into the right direction of where is possibly coming back and repeating again. Although there has never been an NFC East team in the last 30 years to win the division twice, and yeah, it's going to be very, very interesting to see how that plays out. Can Philadelphia break that mold, winning the division and heading back to the Super Bowl again? I mean, it's a tough thing to think about right now, but I mean, it's probably there. It's definitely there for a possibility, but I mean, their biggest competition overall was a team that for the longest time was always at the bottom of the barrel, but unlike what happened, but then what happened last year, the Washington Commanders. I mean, it seems like the Washington Commanders right now are coming deep and hard for the Philadelphia Eagles. They made a lot of big moves in the offseason. They traded for Laramie Tunsil from the Texans, Deebo Samuel from the 49ers. They picked up Dietrich Weiss Jr. from the Patriots, Von Miller from Buffalo, Javon Kinlaw, Eddie Goldman, Jonathan Jones, Will Harris, Matt Gay. They have picked up a ton of big weapons overall. In the preseason, they've looked really good whenever the starting offense is out there. And yeah, needless to say, I think this Washington Commanders team is very much in contention to potentially usurp the Philadelphia Eagles just on the fact that, as I said before, not a whole lot of teams in this division win their division a second year in a row. But the pieces are definitely there, and it looks like this team is primed and ready to go and make this next jump to the next level. They made it all the way to the NFC Championship game last year. They're hoping that they can turn the tide and get back there. So yeah, in terms of the NFC East, I'm going with the Washington Commanders to win it. 12-5, Eagles at 11-6. The Giants, I think, get up to 9-8, considering that maybe they'll put Jackson Dart in there late in the season. And then the Dallas Cowboys, I have them sitting there at 6-11. I just don't think they have enough there to get them to the second level yet. But I think Washington will find a way to beat Philadelphia in the division and win it, and go to 12-5 and host a playoff game and maybe even more down the road. Bringing us now to our next division, and if the AFC West is the toughest division in the AFC, the NFC North is the toughest division in the NFC this year. Not just because of the Detroit Lions and the Green Bay Packers, who have both been in the playoffs the last couple of years. They've dominated there. Minnesota has been in the playoffs the last couple of years. But the Chicago Bears, with the biggest acquisition of the year, grabbing Ben Johnson, hoping to get Caleb Williams back on track, hoping to make people forget about the god-awful 2024 season that was for the Chicago Bears. And so far in the preseason, they've looked really good. Everything's been coming together for them. They've been playing very well. They racked up the team overall for Caleb Williams to have success. They drafted Colston Loveland, even though he also had Cole Kmet. They grabbed some help for the running back, for the wide receiver room with Luther Burton III. You know, just everything's working in the right direction for them. The question is, will it pay off overall on the playing field? Ben Johnson's been a great offensive coordinator for the Detroit Lions. Here's your chance to show what you can do. And they started off with a bang next Monday when they face the Minnesota Vikings on Monday Night Football. So just big things all across the board for the Chicago Bears. Speaking of the Detroit Lions, what's going to be about them this year? I mean, last year they came off a franchise best 15-2 record. You know, they had everything they needed to potentially get to the Super Bowl, and yet they couldn't get out of the first game because Washington just came in and just completely rocked their world. And now you don't have Aaron Glenn or Ben Johnson there as your offensive and defensive coordinators. So the question becomes, does Dan Campbell still have what it takes to get this team back to leading the division again? It's a tough thing to do right now. And, you know, you got a couple people from within your division within your team coming in to essentially come in and do this. And it's going to be really tough to do. But if anybody can do it, I think the Detroit Lions can do it here. I think they have I'm going to give Dan Campbell the benefit of the doubt. I think we should all see what they can do. I think they got a chance to stick around and potentially lead this division again. Green Bay, one of the big things they did was drafting a wide receiver in the first round for the first time in 23 years with Matthew Golden, who looks okay in the preseason. You know, Green Bay a couple years ago had that miracle win over Dallas, and then couldn't get past. Which team was it that they couldn't get past? They couldn't get past. Was that this year? San Francisco? That was the year they won. And then last year, of course, they couldn't get past Philadelphia, which, funny enough, they will see again on Monday Night Football this year. And you know, team's been looking pretty good the last couple of years under Jordan Love. The question is going to be eventually, you know, this is the third year for for Jordan Love as the starting quarterback. Aaron Rodgers was the starting quarterback in year 3 when he got the Green Bay Packers to the Super Bowl where they beat the Steelers. Will this be the time that he gets to do that again? I mean, that's going to be tough to say. There's a lot of question marks on whether or not this team can keep up with the other teams in the division. They've done a pretty good job of staying in there the last couple of years. Will the third time be the charm for them? So obviously there's going to be one team left out, and I think it's going to be the Minnesota Vikings. I just don't think they're going to be as good as they were last year. The last couple of years when they made the playoffs, it never really feels like they've earned that spot. Like they were so that good that they deserve to be in there. No, it never really felt like that to me. Like, it always felt like they got lucky a lot of times, especially last year in particular when they were 14-3. I don't know if they're going to keep that up again. I think J.J. McCarthy will have a good year overall. Will have a good first year there. I think there's a lot of potential there for what they can do as a team in general, but I think they're going to be the odd man out in this situation. I think all the other teams in the division are going to be too tough for them to take on. So in terms of the NFC North, I have the Detroit Lions leading the division once again at 13-4. I've got the Chicago Bears making the playoffs at 10-7, and also the Green Bay Packers at 10-7 as well. And like I said, there's got to be an odd man out, and for me, that's the Minnesota Vikings sitting there at 6-11. Next up, the NFC South, the division that Tampa Bay has pretty much had control of over the last couple of years, ranging from Tom Brady coming in the last couple of years and Baker Mayfield coming in. They have been the ones that have always led this division overall, but this year, could that change? Maybe, maybe not, but this probably is the weakest of all the divisions overall. The Atlanta Falcons, let's start with them. First full year with Michael Penix Jr. as the starting quarterback. They can't get rid of Kirk Cousins to save their life, but they haven't really done anything overall to prove that they're capable of getting to that second level overall. I mean, the biggest thing they have going for them is Michael Penix Jr., and he looked pretty good in the last couple of games he played last season, but the question is, now with a full season here, what can you really do with a team that does not look like it's that different from last year overall? Nothing about them really stands out overall from what they had last year, and the question is going to be, of course, can you get to that second level and show everybody what you can do? It's going to be tough to see what happens here, and I think it's a very complicated division for them overall, but I mean, it could be something that could be interesting to see what happens. I don't know if it's going to work out in the end for them, but the biggest team with a lot of question marks is the Carolina Panthers. Bryce Young has had a tough time in the NFL, but then again, it doesn't help that he's had 3 coaches in the last couple of years. They haven't really done a good job of progressing with him. Last year, he looked pretty good in the second half of the year, but not enough to really say that, okay, this guy's back and this guy's going to get it together this season. Could get it together, but it's a test for everybody involved in there. I think they did a good job of packing some weapons for him with Trevor Etienne, Tutorial McMillan, Jimmy Horn Jr. A lot of weapons there for Bryce Young overall to use to get into that next level. But again, it's going to be tough sledding overall. I think overall because of how tough the division is overall, especially considering, not with this team, the New Orleans Saints, who, man, talk about an off season. Derek Carr decides to just retire, and it leaves you with literally no one else to go to except to either Spencer Rattler or Tyler Shuck. And spoiler alert, Spencer Rattler drew the short straw, and that means he's going to be the starting quarterback. I can just imagine that in order to pick the quarterbacks, they had Rattler and Tyler Shuck in the room, and it's just like, here's these straws. Whoever picks out the smallest straw goes on to be the starter. And then Spencer Rattler picks it up and goes like, shit. And then Tyler Shuck's just like, you're the starting quarterback for the New Orleans Saints. And then Kellen Moore's just like, and you'll be a backup quarterback for the rest of your life, Shuck. Hooray! I just feel like that's what happened, because I don't know who would want that job as the starting quarterback for the New Orleans Saints right now, especially with the way the team looked. They did not look good in the preseason. Everything they had going for them does not look pretty good. Their roster overall isn't that promising. Alvin Kamara is probably the only main guy on offense that's still noteworthy of them, along with Cameron Jordan on the defensive side of the ball. Although they did grab Brandon Cooks back, and you got Chris Olave, but again, there's nothing about this team that makes me say this team's going to go places this season. The only place that I think this team's going to go for is deep for that number 1 pick in the draft this year. I think they're going to try to be in the Arch Manning sweepstakes. I just don't think they're going to be that good this year. I think they're going to be right up there with the Indianapolis Colts and the Cleveland Browns for some of the worst teams in the league this season. And last but not least in this division, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who have extended their franchise record by reaching the playoffs for 6 straight seasons. And I think that will continue to be a 7th season because the Bucs look pretty good. I mean, the Bucs still look stronger than ever. Baker Mayfield's coming off a really good year. I mean, he looked pretty good in the preseason. There's a lot of good elements to the team that have been added to it. Emeka Egbuka from Ohio State's pretty good. Tez Johnson. I think there's a lot of good possibilities for Tampa Bay to continue the streak overall. I think they've done a pretty good job. It's about getting to that next level overall, and I think it's going to be tough to do. But I mean, if they keep this up, they can find a way to probably do it overall. So yeah. In terms of the division for the NFC South, Tampa Bay is at 10-7. Atlanta's 9-8. They barely missed the playoffs. Carolina at 6-11, and New Orleans is deep down there at 4-13. And last but not least, we have the NFC West, a very, very tough division overall. A division that was dominated for the last couple of years by San Francisco, and then Los Angeles won last year, and then Seattle and Arizona have been kind of hovering over there. There has not been a clear, consistent winner in this division in the last couple of years, and I think that's going to be the same kind of thing we have this year. Let's start off with Arizona. Arizona didn't really do a whole lot in terms of getting big weapons for Kyler Murray to work with here. The biggest acquisition was Walter Nolan, who's actually going to be out for the first couple of weeks. He's on IR. Will Johnson, the cornerback. They got a lot of help on the defensive side of the ball. The big question is going to be, can you continue to evolve can you get better from where you were last year? I mean, Marvin Harrison Jr. was a great acquisition for your team last year, but that's about it, man. I mean, this team didn't really do anything on the offensive front to really elevate them to the next level. So yeah, it's going to be very tough for them to stick around in this division overall, especially with everybody else involved. In terms of the Los Angeles Rams, who have ran the last couple of years overall, the big question is going to be, is Matthew Stafford going to be ready to go? Because the last couple of weeks he's been dealing with an injury. There was the belief that maybe he won't play this year, and it could be to start the season off. It could be Jimmy Garoppolo or even Stetson Bennett there overall. They played pretty good last year, but the question will be, can you continue that this year? And a couple of notable additions: Konate Munfield, who I know from Pittsburgh. Of course, he was with the Panthers the last couple of years. The big acquisitions: Devontae Adams and who else? Somebody else here. I was gonna say Tyler Higbee. Tyler Higbee's been here, but a lot of big additions overall for the team. The question is going to be, can you stick around in this complicated division, or have people finally figured out Sean McVay's way of doing things? In terms of another team that's been trying to get back in there, the San Francisco 49ers, which last year they missed the playoffs after heading to the Super Bowl the year before. And, they have a lot of missing pieces overall. They traded away Deebo Samuel. Brandon Ayuk's going to be out for the first couple of weeks of the season. There's a lot of additions to the team. There's a lot of departures from the team overall. And the big question is, can this team get back on track to where they were before a couple of years ago? I still am not sure about Brock Purdy. I don't think he's that great quarterback that everyone's trying to make him out to be. Like, they try to keep making him the next Tom Brady, and he's just not that. I mean, he's fine, I guess, but he's not. But he's being helped mostly because he had a wide receiver core that included Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk, and a running back and Christian McCaffrey that he can go to, as well as a tight end in George Kittle. But with that said, though, I don't know. I think there might be a chance for them to get back on track this year, but it's going to be very tough to do in this complicated division overall. With the last one being, of course, the Seattle Seahawks, who will now have a completely rebranded team without Tyler Lockett there, nor Geno Smith, nor DK Metcalf. And now it's going to be Sam Darnold running the show. Jalen Milroe's the backup quarterback they picked up in the draft. They've added new elements in terms of players in Gray Zabel, Nick Emamori, Elijah Arroyo, Riley Mills, Torrey Horton. Some of their big acquisitions they picked up, as I said, Sam Darnold, DeMarcus Lawrence, Steven Sims, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, who is not on the team. The big one, of course, is Cooper Kupp overall. And there's going to be a lot of questions about this Seattle Seahawks overall. Can they get back to where they were before? And it's going to be tough to really figure out with them. But yeah, I can't really go too much more into that one there. But in terms of the NFC West, I have the San Francisco 49ers at 9-8. They're the one that makes the playoffs. Arizona and Seattle tie at 8 and 9, and the Los Angeles Rams, I have them down there at 7 and 10. So in terms of who in the NFC makes the playoffs, Detroit is the 1 seed at 13 and 4. The Washington Commanders are 12 and 5. Tampa Bay at 10 and 7, and San Francisco at 9 and 8. Your wild card teams: the Philadelphia Eagles at 5, Chicago at 6, and Green Bay at 7. So that would mean your wild card round in the AFC would be the Denver Broncos, the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Texans and the Chiefs, and the Bengals at the Jaguars. And it's going to be, and if I had to pick between these teams right now, just going off of the slate that I have here, I'm going to give Pittsburgh the win in the first game. I feel like they had that long drought of not getting past the wild card round, and Denver is not fully ready to go just yet. I think the home field advantage helps the Pittsburgh Steelers win that one. Home field advantage will help the Kansas City Chiefs, and the Bengals and Jaguars. I'm going to go with the home team again. I'm going to go with Jacksonville with this one. Now in the NFC, it's the Philadelphia Eagles and the 49ers, the Bears and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the Green Bay Packers, and the Washington Commanders. Well, I was about to say Washington Capitals, but Philadelphia and San Francisco, I'm going to give it to Philadelphia. I think Philadelphia's got to get a game team that's going to try to get back to the big dance once again. Chicago and Tampa Bay, most rookie quarterbacks don't usually do very well in their first playoff game, so I'm going to give it to Tampa Bay on this one. Green Bay and Washington, I think Washington is trying to get back there, get back for a chance to get to the Super Bowl as much as they can. Green Bay has had a tough run last time around. They were in the wild card round. I'm going to give it to Washington this one. So that's the wild card round. Divisional round, we have the Kansas City Chiefs at the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Buffalo Bills. I have Jacksonville winning against Kansas City in the regular season, so I think Kansas City gets revenge on this one in the postseason. And then you have Pittsburgh at Buffalo. I think Buffalo is going to probably be the best team of the NFL this year, so I got to give it to them. And hopefully it won't be a 30-0 bashing like it was the last time they were there before they tried to get back in there, but it was too little too late. So I'm going to give it to Buffalo, and essentially, yeah, Allen versus Mahomes, 16. I don't know how many there have been since then, but probably not 16. But in the NFC, the divisional round consists of Tampa Bay at Washington and Philadelphia at Detroit. Tampa Bay and Washington have been in a couple of really interesting postseason games in their history. Tampa Bay, trying to give Baker Mayfield an opportunity to get to the next level. But Washington, I think, is going to be game for this one. I'm going to give it to Washington this one and have them go to the NFC Championship game again. Philadelphia at Detroit. Detroit got burned last year by Washington. I think they want their revenge. Philadelphia, I think, being away from Lincoln Financial Field is going to hurt them in this one. I'm going to give it to the Lions. I think the Lions will host the divisional round. They'll host the championship game next week. So that means our conference championship is going to be Kansas City at Buffalo and Washington at Detroit. In the AFC, Buffalo, look, more than likely it's going to be Kansas City because Buffalo can't get past Patrick Mahomes in the postseason. But for a fun Super Bowl, a Super Bowl that I actually want to see happen, where it's not Patrick Mahomes lifting up another Lombardi trophy, I am going to go with the Buffalo Bills. I think Buffalo is going to do everything they can to win this one. It will be their last game at Highmark Stadium as they move into the new stadium next year. It's going to be a raucous crowd there. I got to give it to Buffalo. I think the Buffalo Bills are going to make it to the Super Bowl in 2026. Now, Washington and Detroit, very tough game. Washington has looked pretty good in last year. Detroit's been looking very good the last couple of years. Home field advantage, I think, is going to work in favor of the Detroit Lions. Plus, they want revenge for what happened in the NFC divisional game last year. So, I'm going to give it to the Detroit Lions. And so, Super Bowl 60 will be Buffalo at Detroit, or Detroit at Buffalo at this point. And so that means somebody's going to win the Super Bowl for the very first time. But the question is going to be, which one is it? And for this one, it's a tough game. I think it could be a very fun game overall if it's these two teams. But I'm going to go with the team that has been screwed over so many times in the Super Bowl, all the way back to the 90s. The Buffalo Bills will finally hoist the Lombardi Trophy and introduce their new stadium with a beautiful Lombardi Trophy in 2026. That's my belief. The Buffalo Bills will be your Super Bowl 60 champions in 2025. Now, watch it be Kansas City in the Super Bowl for the AFC and Philadelphia, San Francisco, one of those two teams, because you know exactly that's what it's going to be, because the NFL loves its repeat teams in there. But if you want a fun Super Bowl, Detroit at Buffalo seems like the way to go, and I think Buffalo will win that Super Bowl easily. So there you go. Those are my predictions for the 2025-2026 season, and like I said, do not quote me on any of these. I've usually been more wrong than right with my predictions. So, yeah. So do not take this as seriously as you would think I would be taking it. This is just a fun thing to do. Just a week before the preseason, there's literally nothing going on. There's no games this week in the NFL. There's games in college football, but with the whole CBA thing, one preseason game gone. What else am I supposed to do? But it's gonna probably be cut down to 2 games, preseason games next time whenever the new CBA comes into play. But anyway, I'm done right here. Thank you so much for joining me on this first edition of the new season of the NFL Network. We'll be back here next Wednesday to talk about my Week 1 NFL predictions, and we'll go through all 16 games. We'll find out which teams I have winning what games. And get you a little sneak preview of next Sunday's premiere of the Sunday Night NFL rewatch between the Baltimore Ravens and the Buffalo Bills. So, with all that said, I thank you so much for watching this. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you guys next time. Take care. The following has been a presentation of the Reviewing Network Sports.